Good morning, traders, and welcome to the opening print. I am Fleri. With me this morning is Aaron from Mind Unbound, and we are coming to you guys from the Place Your Trades Network. We host daily podcasts where we take our yes/no picks in the event contracts live on air. If you want to follow along with our picks as well as the picks from the rest of the team, get a chance to win weekly cash and prizes, head on over to placeyourtrades.com. When you head on over and you sign up, you are going to get a free trade from our sponsor, Trade Just make sure that when you sign up for that Trade account, you do it on the link that is on placeyourtrades.com. We want to make sure you guys get that free trade and you can join us in these event contracts. Aaron, man, we're kind of riding in high on some good picks from Twitter yesterday. A couple of YOLO type trades or long shots, as we like to call them, but really good risk reward. So how's it feel to be you this morning, man?
Feeling good to be me, man. Yesterday worked out well. Both of us pretty good. See if we can do the same today.
Yeah, man. I think we've got a bunch of stuff to jump into. We'll definitely get into placing some trades and some things like that. But we find ourselves in kind of an interesting spot this morning, right? I mean, we've got this sort of big rally from the lows. I think sellers got their push. We pushed new yearly lows. The dip buyers got their big opportunity that they probably took about 10 or 15 shots on the way down. We've got a tough job in front of us today. I mean, what is your take on kind of where we're just sitting in the markets in general?
Look, these large gaps up into a squeeze kind of put us out of balance, but still not filling the gap above. Get me a little bit concerned. So I want to see if there's any initiative buying into the open, if they can break us out of here. But I'm a little bit hesitant.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think this is going to be a tough spot to make some picks today, because I think we likely will auction both directions, and we can get more into that nuance when we get there. But I think one of the things that we're going to be able to do is to use these event contracts to take a little bit of that sort of guesswork out of the fact that, we don't necessarily have to worry about entry here. We can sort of just trade a thesis or the nuance that we've seen in these markets when we open like this. So before we jump into our picks, maybe you can tell us a little bit about these event contracts, sort of the strikes and some of the things that people can expect when they were to pull up the app.
Yeah, man. I mean, these things have been working great, especially with the ranges that we've had in the market. They just give all the widely traded markets several different strikes to choose from. Super simple, yes or no. Are we going to trade above or close above certain levels? And it gives me a way to take a full directional move on the day in a very simple way. So I've enjoyed them for holding them for the whole day, which is not something I normally do as a scalper. So these have been...
It's like buying right into runners was kind of the joke we were saying yesterday, right? Like pretty tough to hold an NQ runner or an ES runner from the lows in Globex all the way to the close. They just barely got your ES yeses yesterday, right? Like it was down to the wire, like less than 7 points or something.
Yeah, man. I mean, it was a 100-point rally to get above the strike that I picked.
And you got it almost.
Right before the close, they pulled it right below my strike.
A damn 50 bot gotcha. Cool. Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't we jump into it? Let's start to place some trades. So let's bring that bull and bear out here, boys. All right, Aaron, we've got 10 event contracts to pick from, man. I think it's time. Why don't you place your trade, brother?
Yeah, mine is somewhat based on, I'm not so sure I believe this move, and I saw a good risk to reward pick, so I went with the no on the 36.75. Looking for a failed breakout here. It was a 10-to-1 pick, so I paid $1.25 to pick no to win 20 on 36.75. Looking for this rally higher to run into some problems, coming in with overnight inventory really long, maybe not able to fill the gap above, up by, I think, 37.65, and fading that lower. For this to pick to work, I do need us to break below 37.35, which could be support. So I'll be watching that pretty closely. But if we can get below that, I do think there's a good chance we fill the gap and satisfy that. And I'd be looking to hold it if we can continue lower. All right, Fleury. I made my pick. I think it's time to get Drake out here and see what he wants to say.
Let's get him out. Fade it or trade it. Listen, Aaron, I love you, brother. Yesterday we were riding together on the long shots. We'll get a poll up in chat here, guys. Tell us what you think. Is Aaron's pick a fade or a trade? Man, I got to go with. So we're Leroy today. We'll talk a little bit about that more because we got a bunch of them. You know, we've got the momentum. The Hopium buyers are in effect. I do like the fact that we're on a relatively large gap up and a large move from the lows, where if we fill, say, like, you know, that sort of whatever your gap rules are, but if we start to move like and get that gap close to filled or even like more than 50% filled and buyers don't step in, I like your chances. Obviously, I like the risk reward of your trade, but I got to go with the momentum. I got to go with the buyers and some of the nuance. So I'm going to go fade. I think we have a chance for those to get into the profit, though. So it's an interesting trade where I think, similar to what we did yesterday, you know, you got them on the cheap. You might be able to get half of those off or something like that for 100% gain and free roll the rest. So I like that piece of it. But as far as like just a clean fade or trade from where I think we close, I'm going to go fade. But I still think those things get into the money. And I think there's some nuance when I jump into my pick that will get those into the money. But as far as like just a clear fade or trade, I got to go fade. You know, I'm on fade Drake, man. Get those no's out of here. I'm a bull.
Fair enough, man.
So it looks like, what do we got here? We got a couple of 10-1 only. Yeah. So, okay. A couple people on the fade train. But anyways, all right. So you've made your pick. Let me jump into my analysis and I'll share with you guys what I'm going with here for this week. Let me get in the right state of mind here. We got to get this turned off. We got to get this going. All right, I'm in the pits. There we go. All right, so for my pick this week, I am going to go very simply with a NQ yes. And I'm going to take, let me turn the pits off here real quick. Let's put these strikes in here. So here's our strikes for NQ today. I can kind of slide out of the way here real quick. But what you're seeing here, I'm going to go 11.5 yes. When I took the screenshot, they were paying, or they were $11 for the yes. And here's why I'm going to jump into those 11.5 yeses. Very simple. We're in a tough spot. We've moved off of the lows, all those things that we just talked about. And so the reason why I'm going to go with nuance over just sort of like, you know, are we going to continue higher or lower? Because we're in a tough spot. We could go down. We could fill the gap. Aaron's trade could get picked up. You know, we could just momentum higher. But there's two nuance patterns that I use all the time that are activated today. And the first one is from an old good friend, and that's a failed peak of balance. So, you know, we peaked below a 4-day balance and even like a 2-day balance. We reclaimed that balance and they started to see those shorts start to liquidate their positions, and you saw a short covering rally. Typically, when we break a balance area and we reclaim it, you'll see a multi-day journey back to balance area high. In NQ, that balance area high is roughly like 11.6, 11.615, and the 11.5 strike comfortably in there. So even if we don't close at balance area high, I think similar to Aaron's idea, there's an opportunity for these yeses at 11.5 to be well in the money. And so with that being said, I'm going to go with those 11.5 yeses. And the other nuance here is that we're gapping above what I would call an open test drive. And Thursday's open test drive lower, when we gap above that in the Globex session, typically we see an open test drive into that level and then a shot out and we get that open test drive higher. And so, you know, what you might see is you know, Pax here in the NQ pits, Pax over here somewhere in the NQ pits, he's selling on the open. I'm going to be taking those. I'm going to have my hands in. I'm taking those. I might even try to add to my 11.5s as we push down in, attempt to fill that gap, and and get some more of these 11.5s potentially cheaper than where we're at. So I'm going 11.5 yes, and I'm leaning into the nuance of those two things: reclaiming balance area, multi-day journey back to balance area high, and the gap above an open drive from Thursday. Typically, the pattern we see on the open is an open test drive lower or an attempt to fill that gap and then a shoot back up higher. So let's bring Drake out here. Let's see what Aaron, Drake, and the chat think.
All right, guys, let's get another poll up in chat. If you guys want to tell Fleury whether you're trading or fading his bullish call, let us know. I mean, I think from my perspective, I can totally see that playing out. I mean, my concern is that perhaps that move to the top of balance was satisfied in the overnight session. We have already looked up there, found some sellers up there by 11,550, and I like the pick, and in some ways we're looking for the same thing. So the pullback that you're looking for is where I'm going to be a little bit cautious on mine as well. So if that holds, I do like your trade, and I don't want to speak in both directions here as I look at my charts, but I'm looking for that support to fail and test a bit lower. That gets me in the money on mine, where then I'll make a decision on whether I want to flip to the long side or not. I don't want to flip the Leroy, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that was another thing too. Like we didn't really jump into that, but yeah, NQ's a Leroy up, ES is a Leroy up, but we've got a bunch of them. So why don't we bring Leroy out here and see what he has to say about the markets today?
So first of all, I gotta know, the Leroy thing has always kind of confounded me. How exactly does this thing work?
Yeah. So like, what the fuck is a Leroy, right? Yeah, we've been a lot, like you and Pax too, all week. Like, all right, guys, explain this Leroy to me. So listen, Leroy is it's an old gaming meme. Leroy Jenkins, like he shot into to some some dungeon in some gaming thing, and he just didn't care. He just went in without everybody, and that's sort of like this continuation pattern. Is when the delta lines up in this pattern here, and let's see, I can kind of slide over again. Here you can kind of see like we have RTH pivot, which is the blue line up here. Then you have the yellow, which is sort of the Asia pivot, and then you have the red, which is our Euro pivot. They're one time framing lower. When that one time framing lower comes to this point where they break that spot of the Euro pivot, we typically see continuation. And so that's that 1, 2, 3. Now today, the markets, we have RTH, Asia session, and Euro session one time framing higher. So we're going to look to take breakouts from these levels. And again, this isn't to say that we have to close outside of these levels. Like, you kind of mentioned you faded my pick last week, and it was a Leroy up. And the Leroy up, actually, it shot up. It went 80 points out. I think ES went 30 points straight out of the open. But we closed, I think 60 points lower. So this is an intraday trade setup. It will just sort of like give us a probability that we see this directional move intraday. Do we close up there? That's sort of like up to the fate of the markets. Obviously, we don't know that, but this pattern does help us at least get some version of a directional bias. So that's what the Leroy is, and we've got a bunch of them. I think the first one to kind of talk about, and I'd be interested to hear your take on this, Aaron, would be that we have a Leroy up in ES. And so ES is a Leroy up at 37.37. So again, like if we look at that one time framing, the top of this zone or our breakout level is 37.37. So how does that play into sort of your thesis around the auction in ES today?
I think it kind of lines up with the confluence that I'm looking for. So 37.35 was the area that I'm looking for this to really start to break down. In the overnight session, last night we have single prints there. So that's where we kind of accelerated out from. And if you look back to the low in June, when we gapped out of that 2-day balance at the low, the bottom of that gap was yesterday's RTH high to the tick. 37.5 is the top of that gap. So if we fall back below that, I'm looking for further weakness. And so it actually kind of lines up with me. If your level is 37.37 and we hold that, I would be cautious on holding my short. But below that, I think that we get a more of a failure, like a failed breakout here.
I think that's a great way to look at this sort of setup too, is that it's, kind of calling it a pivot. I mean, it is a pivot. It's our Euro session pivot, but, knowing we have this continuation pattern, we kind of want to be seeking longs above and cautious, sort of down below that area, because if we know that's a high delta spot and we have all this continuation above it, what happens if we get below it? We're going to unwind down below that too. So, for me, I still sort of lean into this, from some levels below, but I think you're absolutely right. Like, this being sort of that line in the sand where you also have some other levels is interesting. So we'll see. 37.37 ES Leroy up. NQ 11.509. I want to make sure that didn't shift here as we have some sort of action going on. Nope, 11.5, basically 11.510. So we're Leroy up above my pick, which I like too. Again, looking for that continuation, and ultimately, if the NQ Leroy typically goes about 100 points, that brings us to that balance area high, that 615, the overnight high, and our ATR in that is well up above. So we're closing in on the top of the range. It's just a matter of, is this going to be an anomaly day where we close outside the ATR, or are we going to reject this balance area high? Either way, NQ Leroy up 11.510. RTY Leroy up 17.46. You guys, don't short Rusty today. Get long Rusty. Jam it down. Horses stops. He was talking trash last week. Go for those stops. Leroy's coming for you, horse. Watch out. RTY, Leroy up. 17.46. Shots fired. There they go. CL 85.
Candy was going for that one too, man. Candy wanted the long Rusty as well.
Dude, this is what happens. You come in, first of all, you come in as like an avatar, one, in a strip club, two, and you talk some shit, we're going to come for you a little bit. So anyways, CL Leroy up 85, YM Leroy up 29,838, 6E. This is an interesting one. So currencies on a Leroy up 0.995. That actually could move. This thing's been on the move. If you can find a market in the yes nos on that would be a fun one to kind of get into that product. So 6E Leroy up 0.995, and then gold Leroy up. This one is a nuance on the Leroy, so it's what I would call a wide Leroy. It's running in gold. It's running from 1719, so like 1720 to 1706. So it's a relatively wide range for this Leroy. It's moved pretty far in the overnight auction. So I would look to trade that sort of like balance. So with that being said, like Aaron, if you were looking at that knowing, 1720 is sort of balance area high, 1700, let's just call it as balance area low, how would you sort of trade that basically?
I would probably wait for the break into balance and look to get long towards the low. I don't generally want to fade that if it's coming to test the top of a balance. I'll wait to see what happens when it gets towards the bottom rather than fading towards the top, because you always get those little looks belows and then bounce back out. And I'm not
totally agree. Yeah, so I'm with you on that. If I'm trading this like balance, I want to be taking it from destination trade. I want to be taking it from value area low or balance area low to balance area high and be part of that breakout from way down low versus like, I'm not a very good breakout trader. So I don't want to be buying the high, looking for the break of the high. So I'm with you. In gold, it's 17, 19, 20, but I'd look for a dip to pick up, which technically that market's already open, and we sort of saw that. It traded all the way down to 17.08 and is now breaking out of the Leroy high. So still some potential there. So that's our Leroys for the session, guys. We've got, 7 different Leroys to kind of trade with. And I think we've got a couple of good picks. Aaron, just to recap, your pick is ES
36.75. No, looking for a breakout failure here.
Fade it. I'm going 11.5. Yes, and Q. Sorry, brother. And I think it's a mix between chat and what you got. Chat's like horses giving us the thumbs down on the RTY. That's funny. So anyways, we've got a couple of different picks, kind of the same general trade thesis, but we're looking to potentially pick these up from different areas. So it'll be kind of cool to see how these pan out. So one last thing here before we sign off, guys. Orderflow Labs did put out a tweet, and Place Your Trades, I believe, retweeted that. Go check out the Orderflow Labs Twitter. It is at Orderflow Labs. We are giving away 1 month subscription to Orderflow Labs. There's a fade or trade on my 11.5 pick. you need to be following both Orderflow Labs, Place Your Trades, and then obviously just comment and like. And if you want a chance to win a month subscription to Orderflow Labs, definitely pop on over there, give us your opinion, or just give us your opinion either way, which I'm sure people will. So yeah, check that out, guys, if you want an opportunity to check out the Orderflow Labs tools and just to have some fun with us and join Drake on a fade or trade on our Twitter. But yeah, man, I think that's our analysis. We've placed our trades. We're about ready for the opening print. We got about 10 minutes. So whether you're trading it or fading it, guys, you can follow along with the PYT team at placeyourtrades.com or on Twitter at placeyourtrades. Again, you can follow us on Twitter for Orderflow Labs or at orderflowlabs.com. Aaron, where can these guys find you?
Twitter, Living Right Co.
Living Right Co. Good, clean living. And I can vouch for that. Clean runouts on the river in the poker game. That's for sure.
On the river.
I love it. Well, listen, man, thanks for joining. Always a pleasure. And thanks, everybody, for joining out there that's following along. Don't forget, when you place your trades, make sure that you manage risk, and we'll catch you guys again next week. Take care.
Take care, guys.